Welcome, everyone, to Circle City Conversations. Thank you for joining me for our conversation today. Thank you to our sponsor, Hearst Lamontes, an Indiana law firm representing injured Hoosiers. I am here today with my dear friend, fellow trial lawyer who fights against injustice for his clients every day, a father, a husband, a leader in our community, and a very talented entertainer, my dear friend, Travis Jensen. Travis, thank you for being here today.
Thanks for having me, Alex. It's great to be here.
So, Travis, this is not your first time in our studio, right?
It's not, and I feel like I should say, not saying anything with your wonderful introduction. It's like I, endorse that, and I don't endorse what you said, except the father and the husband. That's accurate. But yes, it's not my first time. No, we were here recording a presentation before, so I feel like I'm back home.
And not your first time in a studio listening to the sound of your own voice, right?
It's not the first time.
Yeah.
I have done it a few times, yes.
So let's start from the very beginning. Where are you from? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Lafayette, Indiana.
Oh, my.
Yep.
Where'd you go to high school?
I was listening to some of your other podcasts, so I think Dave Duncan's already covered this. So he's covered the high school and the
Bronchos.
Hospital. He covered it, yes. Although I did, when he said that, I didn't know the story. You
didn't?
No. So I had to Google it to see. And there's actually another version of the story.
We have to hear it now. You got to tell us.
It's less interesting, but a guy that was a longtime newspaper reporter in Lafayette, Dave Bangert, did an interview with another guy, Jeff Washburn, that was a longtime sports commentator. And Washburn gave the story that Dave told you.
Yeah.
Although I think Dave said it was a janitor, and this article said that it was actually a seamstress who had actually made the early uniforms. But I guess the real story was it was a coach, and the coach had and they said, well, it's a pretty good story, but the one that has lasted longer is evidently people enjoy that more. So, yeah.
That's so funny. So I went to Satellite High School in Satellite Beach, Florida, and it's right on the beach. And we used to be the sand crabs, and someone thought it wasn't very intimidating. So they drew a scorpion tail on the sand crab, and then we became the Scorpions because that was a tougher mascot. And that's the story that I've heard and the one that goes around town. I'm not sure if there's much truth to that.
And I'm sure all of your sports teams immediately started doing better with that.
Yeah, not really. We were terrible. I tell people I learned how to lose by playing high school football there. We got our butts kicked a lot. So, but it's like I tell my kids, it's not losing, it's learning. You get back up and you keep going. It's the same thing we do, right, as trial lawyers.
Exactly.
Yeah. So in high school, you play any sports growing up?
I did. I played football. That was my main sport that I wanted to play, and I played that all the way through. And then most of my friends also played basketball.
Yeah.
And so I tried that and learned very quickly that was not my sport. And then just to kind of stay in shape in the off season, I tried wrestling. And I found that was actually something that I was naturally a lot better at. So football and wrestling were my sports, yeah.
Well, that's another thing we have in common. Football was my sport, and I tried basketball because I'm tall, but unfortunately I played basketball like I played football. And so, I beat up some people down low.
I think we probably do have quite a bit in common, except you're a bigger guy than I am, so you probably had a different position that you played. But yeah, and I was probably in a lower weight class.
So were you involved with music in high school?
I was. So music goes back to my earliest childhood memories. Yeah. And my dad played the guitar. Oh, okay. And so, there are recordings of me at 3 and 4 years old, singing whatever my dad was playing at the time, some Johnny Cash.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And, it was one of the things, especially before, like, my voice changed. And I could, when you're a male and before your voice changed, I could sing just about anything that any adult male was singing, the highest tenor stuff. And then, but it was something early on that I enjoyed, and I was in from the earliest opportunity in choir. And then I was in throughout high school as well, in a show choir and competition.
Did you learn how to play instruments growing up?
I did.
What was the first one?
Drums. I started on drums.
Okay.
There was always a guitar around, so I would, mess with that some. But the first instrument I took lessons for was drums and drum set. So, in my school system at the time, you could join band before you could join choir. And so I joined band as a 7th grader and took some private lessons. And, of course, some basic understanding of rhythm was always helpful in what I would do. And then as I got older and I started playing in, I'll say, rock bands.
Yeah.
From the time that I was about 14, I think was when I first had a band. And, at that time, you're just happy if you can get enough people together that could actually fake an instrument a little bit. Not really good, full sounds, but it was, I think most anybody that spends some time in music starts that way. And so,
yeah.
Yep.
So my oldest, he's 11, and he's very talented at the piano, just naturally. And we've heard from a lot of place to start.
Piano?
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
That's where I started both my girls, too.
Really?
Yep. And got lessons early, and neither of them took to it to where they wanted to continue it indefinitely, but it still was a tremendous start and base for their understanding of reading music.
Yeah.
And now they don't realize it. I didn't have that ability when I was their age. But, they can sit down with a piece of music and play it.
Yeah.
And, I taught myself piano later on. So, yep. And they both have an interest in music, so it's carried through. But
very cool.
Yeah.
I played trumpet up to high school, and reading music is so mathematical, isn't it?
It is.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I was always good at math, and there's so much overlap there.
There is. Quite a bit.
All right. So you graduated from as a proud Broncho. All right.
As proud as one can be. Yes. We were very proud Bronchos.
Yes. And then you went on to college.
I did.
Tell me a little bit about that.
So I went first for one semester to Ball State.
Oh.
And
we got a Ball State grad in here, right?
Well, all right. Emmanuel. Yeah. Go Cardinals. That's right. And my first major I was not a very focused student right into college. I had to take my own path. But my first major was vocal performance, pre-law.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm sure we'll get into that. But, I always kind of knew, I thought I was going to do music as a career. But when I looked at like more of the traditional things that I could pursue, I always was drawn to the law.
Really?
So, yep.
Wow.
But, now, maybe we'll get into this later too, there's, as you know, from some things we've been involved with together, there's often quite a bit of overlap.
Oh, yeah.
Between the law and other artistic pursuits, more
Absolutely.
than people think at first. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's entire trial colleges where they teach drama in the courtroom.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for weeks and weeks at a time. If I left to go to Wisconsin for 3 weeks, I'd come back to a divorce. I'd be getting served with divorce paperwork.
Well, then maybe let's not do that. Okay.
No. So when you were in college, did you immediately go to law school or
no?
Or, tell me
quite
about
a journey there.
Yeah.
Well, I'll give you the outline, and then you can tell me what you want to jump
Sure.
into. But I went to Ball State for a semester and figured out pretty soon that it just didn't feel like the right fit for me. And so at the time, I was a lot more focused on perhaps studying music as an undergrad, because I certainly was spending most of my time starting to write my own stuff.
Cool.
And had a buddy of mine who's in my band. We'll get to that, I'm sure, later too. But so I thought at the time that I was going to transfer to IU, to their School of Music. I had some connections with a high school director that I had that I thought I would end up there, but they did not, at least was my understanding at the time. I look back now and I'm not sure how much of this is accurate, but this was my perception as an 18-year-old. So that's what I was working on at the time. But I didn't think at the time that IU Music School took mid-year transfers. There was an audition process and had to wait for the next. But I knew Ball State wasn't a good fit. So I ended up back home, which is Lafayette, and I enrolled at Purdue.
Okay.
And then went through Rush that semester, joined a fraternity, and decided to stay there and throw my lot in. But that was also short-lived. I was only there for a year before I decided to leave college altogether and pursue music full-time.
Okay.
And so, because this could be part of the interesting story of the podcast, I'll say that you have to understand at the time in Lafayette, and from my high school, Lafayette Jeff, Axl Rose went to my high school.
Oh, wow.
And, this is the late 80s.
Yeah.
And then also, I have a very large family on my mother's side. And my second cousin was Shannon Hoon, that was the lead singer of a band, Blind Melon.
Yeah.
And so I'm saying that for the purpose of, at the time in the late 80s, there was this perception that you really actually can make it.
Yeah.
Because, we've had not just one, but a couple that are coming through here. And the entire music scene at the time was, everybody thought that, you had an avenue. There was another group as well that was in the punk scene.
Wow.
In Lafayette. And that was Rat Tail Grenadier was their original name. And then they changed it to Squirt Gun. And they were hooked in with Green Day.
Yeah.
And they had some songs that they recorded that were on the Mallrats soundtrack and some others. So the feeling was it was something that was really possible. And so that's what I started doing. So I started working a series of very educational odd jobs from, night receiving at Walmart to pizza places. I worked in a record store. I worked in a high-end audio video store. So a lot of different things to like the day job. Yeah. And then I wrote and recorded a couple of different albums during that time. So,
were you in Lafayette this entire time? Did you stay in Lafayette?
With the exception of a 1 to 2 month period that I went by myself at about 19 to Florida.
Oh.
Because at the time there were a couple of pockets, remember late 80s.
Oh, yeah.
So there were a couple of pockets, one in Orlando, one in Miami, that were supposedly about to have some bands come out of that scene. And so I went down there for a while and, had some odd jobs. I worked down there for a while. And then I realized I actually left a project in the studio in Lafayette to go down there. And then after a little while, I realized I wanted to go back and finish that project. And so I came back to Lafayette, and that's what I did.
That's fun. That's another thing we have in common. I lived in both of those cities.
I thought you looked familiar, Alan.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And so you did that for a little bit, came back to Lafayette, then just tell me kind of what happened next.
Continued working those jobs I just said and recording the music, and then got to a point where, I was 22, I believe, that things just started to settle in for me, and I realized that I loved music. I loved writing and playing it, but I had seen enough things about, the scene to know that it may not be my plan A. And, I'd always been interested, as I said, in the law. And I just, I started taking a couple of classes back at Purdue in the summer of 93. Mm-hmm. And I really took to school, as I hadn't since I was probably 13, 14.
You were older.
I was. It made a huge difference. Yeah. And, I took a couple of classes and I really enjoyed it. And then I went back and I was all in. And I finished my undergrad and then went right into law school and really enjoyed that phase in my 20s. That was a really good time.
Where'd you go to law school?
Bloomington.
Is that the better of the two? There's a big debate between McKinney and Bloomington.
Well, of course, most of the people that I know that practice here went to McKinney.
Yeah, I did.
So, no, I never really looked at it that way. I didn't have, to me, it just seemed like IU Bloomington at the time was more what I was used to as far as Purdue and the campus. And so it just seemed like, that would be a better fit for me to study the law than downtown. I didn't have any real connections downtown at the time. So when,
this is totally off topic, but
is there an on topic?
I don't know. I'm probably not.
That's where the good stuff is. Go on.
I asked Dave about Triple X. Was it there when you were there in Lafayette? Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's been there for years, hasn't it?
Well, oh, yeah. It goes way back. And, of course, I grew up there. So even before I was at Purdue, we would go over to Purdue. And
Yeah, I still have not tried it.
Well,
never been.
I haven't been there in a long time.
Really?
And so I don't know. Playing in bands, you were always aware of the late night places.
Exactly.
So that was one of them that we could always go, no matter what time it was. So, but I can't speak to whether it's still what it was back the last time I was there or not. But
right.
Yep.
You graduate from law school. Let's talk about the early days of your career. What was that like?
Well, probably the best stories for me to say is that, I'm the first lawyer in my family.
That's awesome.
Is that also the story?
Yes.
I assume so. And so, I didn't have any connections or preconceived notions about what it was that I was going to do. And I finished my first year of law school and enrolled in summer classes. I didn't even try to get a clerkship, after my first year. And then it just so happened that my legal research and writing teacher, that was also his first year, and he wasn't that much older than us. So we all really kind of bonded. Mm-hmm. He had worked at the Attorney General's office with my now law partner, Bob Johnson's wife. And the firm that Bob was working at in Lafayette, which is one of the only lawyers' names that I knew at the time, Charlie Vaughn.
Oh, yeah.
We're looking for a summer law clerk. So it was just complete chance.
Yeah.
But as a little odd backstory, Charlie Vaughn's office actually used to do State Farm defense work. And I was somebody brought a case against me before I ever went to law school, which also was a wonderful experience. But Charlie Vaughn's office defended me in that.
Really?
Yeah. And I think looking back that probably was that all happened around the same summer that I decided to go back to school. So even though I don't remember it clearly, I think that may have had something to do with kind of like pulling the string and saying, hey, maybe you ought to. I think that experience of watching it work and thinking, I remember I had an interest in this and now it kind of rekindled it. But that's, I worked a summer there at Charlie Vaughn's office with my now law partner, Bob.
Yeah.
And tremendous first exposure to the practice of law. Not too many years earlier, of course, Charlie Vaughn had the Ryan White case.
Yes.
One of the first adolescents that had gotten AIDS through a blood transfusion, and it became, national, if not world news at the time. And but a small plaintiff's office that got all of my firsts. And they were an active enough office that I actually saw them do several hearings and a couple trials in the summer that I was there.
Yeah.
Probably right before things started to change to where they are now.
Yeah.
But anyway, great experience. And then I went back to law school and dropped my resumes for jobs after my second summer, and then ended up going really a very different direction.
Yeah.
After my second summer, I clerked at Winston and Strawn in their New York office. And again, priceless experiences that I wouldn't trade for anything in my 20s in New York City. It was pretty great.
That's pretty awesome.
It was. Yep.
Did you have an opportunity to do some music while you were in New York, or?
I always did.
Yeah.
Music has always been there, and I did. I went, actually, I didn't tell many people about it, but I auditioned for a couple of bands out in New York.
Really?
And yep. And of course, for whatever reasons, including I wasn't going to be staying there for the next year, I didn't do much with them. But I also studied voice at the music school at Bloomington when I was there for law school. So I think we all had a couple of electives we could take, and it could be anything. And I learned that I could do that as well. So yeah, I went down, and that was pretty enjoyable my third year in law school to go down to the music school and kind of get away from the law school. And it was fun because in the music school, they were all about the music. They didn't care what else I was studying. And I had to, prepare a song for a final performance. And that was a good time as well.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about transitioning from New York back here to Indianapolis. Tell me a little bit about that.
That's pretty easy explanation. So my wife and I dated in high school.
Oh,
yeah.
High school sweethearts. Look at that.
We were, went to the prom together and the whole bit.
Oh,
and,
my gosh.
but then, in our early 20s went our separate ways for a while. But at this time, when I was in New York, we got back together, and she was actually out in D.C. and I was in New York. And we thought for a while that we were for sure going to stay out there. And Winston and Strawn had been really nice in letting me work out of either office, the New York office or the D.C. office at the time. But we found ourselves coming back to Indiana all the time for things that were going on with our family and friends. And when it came to time for us to decide, wanting to start a family, we made the decision that Indiana would be the better fit for us. And so we moved back to Indiana in 2000, and I started working at Barnes in Thornburg. So what kind of work were you doing at Winston Strawn? I was on primarily the Philip Morris tobacco defense team.
Did you deal with Bill? Did you ever? He did the tobacco litigation here in Indiana.
There was a big structure, and I was way down.
You were the 20-year-old lawyer.
You better believe it. Yeah, it was again a great experience. I mean, I flew all over the country for different tasks that I was doing, and the top of that hierarchy was a lawyer, Dan Webb.
Yeah,
and it was a great experience. But no, I never had any personal dealings. I wouldn't have been ready for that yet at my level. Yeah. But,
yeah, he's my partner, and I don't even know if I'm ready for it.
That's part of it, right?
Right.
Yeah, but that's the work I was doing there. And then when I came to Barnes, you ever feel like you kind of really got some really nice breaks along the way somehow, and you had no idea why. But I got placed with some great lawyers at Barnes that at least one of them is still a very good friend of mine today, and was a great mentor and continued to be a great mentor. And I did a variety of litigation work. A little product defense because of what I had been doing, and then some general litigation, and then even a little white-collar criminal. But I was only at Barnes for about another year before I made the switch to do what I do now. So.
And when you made that switch, where'd you start working?
Well, my now partner, Bob,
yeah,
had moved from Charlie Vaughn's office to a firm here in Indianapolis. And when I got back to town, we started, of course, getting lunch and hanging out. And then after a while, he said, you mentioned that you always kind of felt a fit with plaintiff's work. We're looking for an associate. Are you interested? And that was Tabor Law Firm.
Yeah.
And I moved over there in 2001.
Yeah. Roy is a good friend of my partner, Bill Hurst.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. Roy taught me quite a bit. I worked on a lot of cases as his associate. So.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult part for you transitioning from doing defense work to 100% plaintiff's work?
The first thing that comes to my mind is, starting from my first days at a defense firm. And at the time in the late 90s, probably also still true today. I mean, the salaries were more than I had ever imagined that I would make. But you also saw what you were billing out, and you saw the hours of work that you were doing. And so it felt like I'm earning my way.
Yeah.
Okay. As you well know, when you switch over as a young lawyer to doing plaintiff's work, where you may not have any source for bringing in your own work in the early days, that was the hardest transition for me.
Yeah.
Knowing that, when I was assigned to do on the defense side a memo, research, work on discovery, document review, whatever it may be, I was doing the work, I was logging the hours, and that all made sense mathematically. When I switched over to the plaintiffs, that was an adjustment.
Yeah.
Because it was for me, in a way, a very different skill set that I had to pivot to developing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That was, I did some family law where I billed hourly, but a lot of the things I did was flat rate when I started my own practice when I was in my 20s. And then I came here, and that's my favorite thing about this work. I don't have to bill an hour. I don't have to think about anything like that.
Do you ever have lawyers that are like, you really don't? Do you still keep track of your time?
No.
Well,
so Chase does, because he does the civil rights stuff, and you can get fees on that. Yeah. So, but again, those cases, there's great civil rights lawyers, and they'll even tell you somehow, like in California and stuff, that you cannot really sustain a practice doing 100% civil rights work.
Right.
You have to supplement, because, especially nowadays, while it may be kind of en vogue to hold the government accountable and the police accountable, when you read these jury verdict sheets that come out, most of the defense verdicts are those cases.
For sure.
Yeah.
I was going to say, what is the success rate on those cases?
Oh, you're talking about like less than 10%. Right. Worse than premises cases. So.
And that, of course, is one of the other components of what we do.
Right.
Great to not have to bill.
Yeah.
But when you do get to a result, and we like to believe it's very rare, right?
Yeah.
But when it happens and it doesn't come out your way.
Oh, yeah. You eat that. You eat costs. A lot of folks don't understand the amount of costs that go into trying these cases. You were talking about litigating cases in the 90s, and, back then someone could walk in with a small paper file and you could try your case. Now even a simple soft tissue type case, there's all kinds of layers, and it's very complex.
I listened to your talk with Lee Christie.
Oh, yeah.
You guys kind of touched on that, the differences between them. And it's always interesting coming into the plaintiff's practice in the 2000s.
During that transition.
Hearing how things used to be was very different.
Yeah.
Very different than it is now.
So let's talk a little bit about trial. When it comes to trial, what is your favorite part?
There's a lot of parts that I enjoy. There's some parts, as you know, that are extremely challenging. I'd say one of my favorite parts is being able to be so engaged with your client in a way you can get close at a deposition, perhaps, but not the same way as them seeing you and your entire team laser focused
on them.
On them.
Yeah.
And most people, including us, can live most of your life and never have that clear showing of people standing up for you. So that's one of my favorite parts. Another thing that's related to that is that when you're going through the prep process and you see all the ghosts and you're like, I thought I was ready, and then here and now I'm thinking about something that maybe this could be, maybe they're doing this. But when you get, at least for me, and I think it's for most of us, maybe that 2 days before, maybe just a day before, where you settle into realizing that you're ready.
Oh, yeah.
And that is because then you can really settle into it. And I always find some things during that period of time as well. Yeah. Yeah. So that's
and I mean, that's what trial's about. You got to be nimble, move on your feet. There's always something is always going to come up.
Yeah. For those of us that like to try to prepare for everything, you can't.
No.
You can't.
No.
There will always be some surprises.
So tell me about maybe some memorable trials that you've had.
I think they all are.
Yeah.
Really. And, as some favorite mentors of mine like to say, you always learn more from one that you lose than you do from those that you win. But, of course, the ones that you win are also very enjoyable.
Yes.
So as I'm thinking through that, I could take a story from each one of them. The first one.
Yeah.
For me, now I think you did some defense work or...
I did. I was a public defender.
Okay.
Yeah, but I've never done any insurance defense work.
So my guess is that you probably got in there and got some chops going sooner than I did.
I tried my first case less than 2 months after being sworn in.
See, I did not because I was working on the defense, which that was not going to happen at the kind of work that I was doing. And so it was several years into my career when I had my first one. But, I had done a lot of mock trial in undergrad, which really does, a little plug for that, really does prepare you.
It does.
For getting up and talking in front of people. Because, of course, you have the legal side, you have the analytical side. But as we know, once you get into talking with jurors and getting in front and talking to them, it's a different skill set.
Yeah.
It's a different skill set to be able to transfer that. But, I would say in some ways the first one was special because it was the first. And, you have all of those moments where you're like, I've prepped for this for so long, for so many years, and let's see how this goes. And, of course, it doesn't go exactly how you think. And you start to learn that you have to let that go. And so there's that. Another result would be one that I would pick out that we tried where it was, I'm not sure how much of the detail you want to get into, but it was a case where a certain insurance company was being extremely stubborn about how they wanted to evaluate the case. And it was one of those where, there had been no significant offer on the case leading up to trial. And, on the Friday before trial was starting on Monday, then, of course, they open up and make an offer that is very tempting to think that you need to take it. Fortunately, we had a client that was not interested in that. And, there was a $100,000 limit on the case, but we got in there and this was probably a case it's pre-2010, I'm thinking. Mm-hmm. And it sticks out to me just because in jury selection, we had a juror that obviously got struck, but, we presented at the time, how things go in waves of the approach to take things. And we as trial lawyers, I sometimes feel, are searching for what's the next great idea for how to do this. And so-and-so really unlocked the puzzle. Yeah. But at the time, one of the things that we presented was, if you woke up tomorrow and you saw, based on the facts of our case, a verdict for jury awards $350,000, what would you think? And one of the potential jurors raised their hand and said, I'd say the insurance company got off easy.
You're like, I want that person on my jury.
Of course they got struck, but everybody heard it. And that case turned out really well for our client. So, there's a couple of stories.
That's fantastic. I love talking to other trial lawyers about trying cases. It's when I was in law school, I didn't think I would be a trial lawyer. Mm-hmm. And when I started doing it at the PD agency, mostly because I couldn't get a job anywhere else, I took to it like a duck to water. I loved it.
What did you think you were going to do if it was going to be?
I was going to be a hotshot international business lawyer, man, traveling the world, making big billion-dollar deals. And I told myself, you're never going to do criminal defense and you're never going to be a trial lawyer. And then my first job was at the PD agency. And I loved it.
What's an example of one of your favorite?
My favorite trials?
Yeah.
We tried that case about 5 or 6 years back. It was right before COVID, where it was $100,000 policy limits case. And we asked the jury for $100,000 because we did, and obviously there's debate between some lawyers, but we kind of tried it as a hybrid contract tort case.
Sure.
Kind of give our client the benefit of his bargain. And the jury returned a $200,000 verdict. And it was a great result. But the part that sticks out the most in my mind is that it was my oldest son, Franco. It was his 5th birthday that day when we were waiting for the verdict. And, it gets a little late. And I heard the verdict, and then I packed all my shit up and I was out the door. You know what I mean?
I do.
And being able to share, that moment with my family and his, 5th birthday, I'll just never forget that, So that's a great segue. Let's talk a little bit about family.
Sure.
You're a family man, right? We talked a little bit about your wife. What does your wife do?
Well, she recently graduated from nursing school. She went back and got a BSN. And so she's currently about to finish her training at IU Saxony's ICU department.
Wow.
So that means she's been working for about the last 12 weeks with a preceptor.
Yes.
And so, she just worked last night, actually. So.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
And you've got 2 girls, right?
2 girls, 17 and 15.
Okay.
Yep.
So you're not an empty nester quite yet.
No, and it's still at the point. I've had plenty of people around me, and of course we're at the back to school season. So
right.
So many people that are a few years ahead of me. It's still hard for me to picture that. Now I know you've got quite a ways to go before you're there. Yeah. Because you're a young man. But it's still hard for me because so much of my life on a daily basis is my girls.
Yeah.
And so different activities until recently. Now my oldest just got her license.
Oh
so
my
we've
gosh.
just been through that. Yeah. And of course, doing what we do, that could be its own podcast. But so much of it is being involved in their lives that it's hard for me to picture when I see my friends and they've dropped their child off. Some it's their first, some it's their youngest child that they've dropped off at college, and they're talking about that experience. That is hard for me to, I know it's coming, but there's so many experiences, right, Alex, in life where you think how it'll be. For example, having your first child. Yeah. I mean, I thought that I knew what that would be like. And then you live it and you understand why sometimes words can't quite get you there.
No.
Until you've lived it, you don't really. And what a lot of our clients go through.
Right.
You see a story and you think that you understand what that's about, but living it, it's a different experience. So anyway, I know it's coming, and we're in the college search, and we've been doing visits for my oldest, and I know it's coming around the corner, but it's still hard for me to imagine her being in a different city on a regular basis. So, but I look forward to it, as I've looked forward to every stage. They've all been fun.
Right.
Yep.
I was talking to Katie Karras at our office. She's got 2 teenagers, and you go from being physically exhausted to emotionally exhausted, Yep. It's just a different way.
It is.
It's just a different form.
And the things that they want to talk to you about, and the things that they deal with, and the complexity of their relationships increases. And so it's each stage has its own new challenges. You kind of figure out or get comfortable with one stage, and then it's over.
Yeah.
It's time for the next one.
Have either of your girls said anything about wanting to go to law school?
No. And I shouldn't say haven't said anything. I don't think that it's at the top of what either of them are thinking about.
Yeah.
And I would attribute that mostly to they have a lot of other interests that they're processing right now to figure out what they'd be interested in. They are aware of what I do, and I think that they find it extremely interesting to the extent that I can share things with them. They find that interesting. They certainly have enjoyed watching all of the Bar Foundation activities. But I think they definitely have the personalities and the makeup, if they ever found an interest in it, that they would be able to do it. And I could see pros and cons of it. Obviously, if they decided to do that, I feel like I could be helpful, having been through this myself. But I'm also kind of excited to see them branch out and do something else. So either way, it could.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I tell my oldest, just be you and do what makes you happy.
For sure.
So Speaking of my kids, so I had the pleasure of meeting your lovely family at the Benchmark Conference.
And they remember it, yes.
So, and this, I have yet to bring my family to a conference, mostly because they're animals.
Well, that was my first, so you can see I waited, yes.
Yeah, but I'm actually thinking about it this year. There's the AAJ conference is down in Miami, and it falls on the same week as the President's Day, and they get a break there. So I'm thinking about taking them all down. And what piece of advice do you have for someone like me who is crazy enough to bring 4 kids under 11 to a lawyer conference?
I don't have a huge piece of advice. I'll have part of the living it that I just referenced is a little bit different. I think you'll love it. I think you should do it. And I think that you'll create memories there that'll just be wholly different from what they'd be if you didn't have them. Be prepared that you will not be able to be as focused on the business and the work side of it. It's obvious, but you know, when you're going through it, and that's great. I mean, it made me very fresh for the interactions I had, you know, with the foundation while I was down there. But there was always in the background that, well, they're doing this and I'm paying attention to that. So, but I think with a little bit of forethought, I think the pros outweigh the cons.
And I'm lucky. I do have some family down in Miami, which is nice.
That is an added benefit.
And it will be Miami in February, which is also very nice compared to.
I was in Miami one time during the winter months when I was in law school. I actually dated a woman who was from Miami originally when I was in law school, and I was down there for the holidays. And yes, I think it may have been my first time out of, well, maybe not, but one of the few times out of the winter months of Indiana. Nice place to be.
It is. And I, you know, growing up there, I love Indiana. I chose to come here. I love the people. That's really the biggest thing that brought me here. Every winter it gets a little more difficult.
I would wonder about that. I mean, if you're born and raised and used to the climate there, it's a little bit different here.
Yeah, it is. So you talked about the Bar Foundation.
Yep.
You are the president of the Indianapolis Bar Foundation.
I am.
And tell me a little bit about the Bar Foundation and some of the things that they do.
Well, you know, the Bar Foundation, as you know, I mean, you've had Julie on here and you've had Dave on here, who's the president of the Bar Association, and Lee, who's going to be our new president, and the former president of the Bar Foundation, Lee Christie. But, you know, they are two parts of, well, they're different organizations, but of course they work very closely together. And you have the association side that has all of the members of, you know, our community. I think it hovers between 4,000 and 5,000 members at any given time. And then, of course, the foundation is the fundraising arm of the association. So I would say the quickest way for me to explain a lot of things that we do is, of course, we hold events.
Yeah.
As you know, Alex is a member of our board throughout the year to raise money.
Yep.
And that money is raised through sponsorships and different activities that we have at each one of the events. And then the foundation has some specific programs that we give back to the community. Some of the favorites for me, and there are many of them. I mean, I've been around the foundation for several years. You can go back and look at from the community empowerment grant that's made to a variety of smaller grants that are given every year.
Really?
Scholarships, obviously some of the activities that are done to help with legal services for those that cannot afford them. The current, which Julie talked about in her talk, the virtual helpline, Ask a Lawyer. Now, I did have a chance to go out before that went virtual in the pandemic and spend a day before at one of the libraries in Marion County, having people come in with all kinds of different questions and things to ask. And, you know, for most of us, I think probably nearly all of us, it has that component of being a lawyer, of giving back and being able to help people that are not in a position to be able to help themselves at the time. And a lot of times in our busy practices, there's a bit of a disconnect on the day-to-day of that feeling like you really made somebody's life a little bit easier or you really helped them. It's a great way to reconnect with that part of it and know that you really helped somebody in a very specific way on a daily basis, you know, to help them have a better day or get through a problem, or they, you know, have no idea where to start, and you get them on their way, and that's another benefit. But and then, of course, you know, that's a few words on some of the things that the foundation does. Another thing that I'd say is the experience for being involved in the foundation. I got involved in the probably around 2015, give or take, I had a former classmate of mine that was involved, and I saw that there were some other people I knew, and I just was like, hey, what's this about? Because I was not one of the people that was involved in the association right out of law school, because I started somewhere else.
Yeah.
And but anyway, I started being around it, and just the energy of the people, as you well know, is it's very engaging and brings a lot of the people that try it out back, because it's just a great energy. You get to meet and get to really know so many other different lawyers in the community, which is not only fun, but it oftentimes helps in your practice when you end up seeing somebody, or with knowing somebody that practices in a certain area, so you can help another client out. It just a lot of positive things that come from that. Yeah.
The Bar Foundation, you mentioned they do other maybe more social type programs, networking events, things like that. Yeah. One of the things we're doing coming up is the Indiana Fever game.
Absolutely, which I cannot wait. Yes, it will.
That'll be a lot of fun. And one of the things, another thing that my office has partnered with the Bar Foundation is the Indy Bar's Got Talent show. And I remember talking to Julie, and she was on the podcast, and she talked about how she wasn't sure if it would be a success. And surely enough, it was a success the first time, and it was an even bigger success the second time. You were able to play there.
We did play there. I think there was a lot of, when it was first being talked about, I think there was a lot of concern that maybe it wouldn't be as well received as it ended up being. But I think that goes back to what I was referencing about there really being a lot of overlap between lawyers and having, other pursuits or other interests in an artistic side. Mm-hmm. And as you could see from that, from both of them that you were involved in, we always find others that are have a talent, whether it be music or stand-up comedy. Yep. And I'm sure there are plenty of others that we've not tapped yet. But yes, we did get to play there, and what a great night that was.
Right?
Yeah.
I love the variety. I think putting on different acts really just increases kind of the value of the show. Yeah. Yeah. And I thought that was great. So as far as, we talked a little bit about, you guys playing at the talent show this year. Tell me a little bit about your band. Okay. An innocent band, right? Yeah.
This band, and of course I'll say some members, this band is a tribute to the music of Billy Joel.
Okay.
And I mean that we put the band together 2009. I think we first played in 2010. So it's been around for a while. And we happened into that because I had, as I told you, I played in bands for most of my life.
Yeah.
The guitar player that is in this band, I played with when we were recording original material in 1990. So we go way back. And we'd played in a variety of original and cover bands over the years. But I had not been doing anything musical for, I'd say, probably about 5 years because I was having my daughters.
Right.
Well, we were, Susan was doing the hard work.
Right.
Obviously. But,
we do some work.
There's a little bit of tests in there somewhere.
Yeah,
but,
I was I got up 3 or 4 times overnight.
I'd like to, I guess Susan would be the one to speak to that. My memory is I really tried, but we'll see. But I hadn't done anything musical in a few years, and there kind of was this, at least from my perspective, this increase in bands doing tributes to different artists. It was kind of a different level. I mean, when I first heard of it, I was like, I combined it with like impersonators or imposters, I had a negative association with it.
Yeah.
And then, but I started to go see, and I was like, what this lets you do is it lets you really refine the performances of this discrete set of music and play for a crowd that will come out as a huge fan of that artist.
Yes.
And so anyway, then I was like, well, who would I do? And I'd always been told, I actually think I have one of those faces where I've got a long list. At one time I made a list of all the people I've been told I look like, because none of them look like each other. But I had been told one of the people on the list was Billy Joel, and I had always liked his music. And so I'm like, well, that would be a possibility. And I think when we first put the band together, we had 2 or 3 artists that we were playing with. One of these could be the one that we do a tribute, and Billy Joel just settled in easiest. And that's what we did. And so, as I said, we've been playing now for about 15 years. The pandemic slowed things down for a while. But now things are starting to come back. So,
are there venues that your band plays regularly?
Not right now. There were before the pandemic.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we had a pretty solid run going with outdoor festivals.
Oh, yeah.
Always including Fishers because it's where I live. And there was a guy that was running that at the time that I got to know really well. The casinos.
Oh.
And that was before they changed ownership about the time of the pandemic happened. But we would play in Anderson and in Shelbyville regularly. And then we would, because when you have a tribute, you actually get more opportunities. I mean, we went up to Michigan and played a theater show, and went out to Ohio a couple of times and played different festivals. And I think that is still going and coming back post pandemic. But frankly, as I know you can also understand, I've been busy enough with work that I haven't had the time to do as much with that as I did at one point. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Well, and I'm sure the foundation keeps you pretty busy.
The foundation does.
Yeah.
Yes. And it's very enjoyable as well. But, time flies. So, I'm the president for 2024, but here we are knocking on September's door. And
exactly.
It'll be time to pass the baton. So, Yep.
So who's the incoming president next year?
Bree Clark.
Oh, Bree.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yep. Fantastic is right. She'll be outstanding. Bree. So do I.
So you went to the Pearl Jam show last night.
I did.
How was it?
It's Pearl Jam, man. I mean, come on. It was outstanding, and it was packed.
Oh my gosh.
And I mean, I knew it would be, but I think that is that's the most people that I've ever seen there before, and I've been going there since it opened. And I should be able to tell you when that is. It's either the late 80s or 1991, probably, when it opened.
Was it Deer Creek back then?
It was.
Yeah.
It was. And I even
still call it Deer Creek.
Well, I try to, that's what it is inside, and I have to translate it. Yeah,
right.
Because it's always Deer Creek to me. But I even I got to play there one time back in the day, which was.
You did?
I mean, there was nobody there, relatively speaking. Probably like 500 people, which is nobody there. But still fun to sit up on the stage. And I remember the backstage area and all that stuff. So it was cool.
That's fantastic.
But it was packed last night. I mean, I went with a friend, and we kind of went last minute and got there late. So we weren't there early to get a spot, or put a blanket down or anything. And we could not find, which was fine because we just kept moving around.
Oh, yeah.
Different places, different perspectives, but they were great. And they played a couple of my favorites. I was watching, you can now get on and see any artist, what their set list has been for whenever you want to see. And Pearl Jam is one of those bands. Rarely plays a similar. It's similar, but they always change it up.
Yeah.
They've always got different, and last night was no exception. I mean, they had some specific requests that they responded to and played, but they also played Black, which is one of my favorite songs by Pearl Jam. So, and I clearly was not the only one, because I'm talking about that entire place in unison.
Yeah. Singing
the lyrics. I mean, belting the lyrics.
Oh, my gosh.
So, yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. And when you're there and it's packed, because I've been to, who always sells out? Dave always sells out in Indiana. Yeah, Fish, you know. And Tom Petty, when, I saw Tom Petty's show there, and everyone starts singing, it's amazing.
It is.
It like moves you.
It is. That's the magic of music.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. What are some of the most memorable shows that you've been to? The ones that really stick out?
Oh, wow. Billy Joel, obviously. I saw Billy Joel long ago before I did the band.
Where was that?
In New York City when I was living there.
My.
I mean, that was before he was doing the residency too, and it was just him.
At the Garden?
At the Garden.
Oh, my gosh.
Obviously, he went on and did a very long run, as a resident, but this was before that. Well, I have to say this. My first concert of my life was Elvis Presley's last concert.
What?
And there's not a lot of people that can say that. So that, of course, was here in Indianapolis, Elvis Presley's last concert here. And I was 6.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I still remember it very clearly. My dad was a huge fan. And, we had nosebleed seats. But he walked me down right near the stage because I had an interest even back then. So that was a huge experience.
Where was that? What venue?
Market
Square?
Yeah.
Oh, my gosh.
And I went to tons of concerts there in the 80s and the 90s. But those were huge. I'm trying to think of anything else that really stuck out. Often it's, the more intimate shows, like I would see down in Bloomington, or like I saw Tori Amos there one time.
Yeah.
And I was a big fan of her music. And I haven't listened to her as much lately, but that concert was timed perfectly, and that was a great show. We went to Maroon 5 earlier this year, and that's one of the other things is that I've never been a big fan. I just didn't think I knew many of their songs. I knew almost everything they played.
Oh, yeah.
And of course, it was the first concert I went to with my full family and my daughters, and they each brought a friend. And
oh, that's great.
Oh, yeah, it was a tremendous experience.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What about venue-wise? Some memorable venues for you where you've been able to watch a show?
Well, the Garden.
Yeah.
I mean, that's...
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if I saw anybody else when I was out there other than Billy. I don't remember that I did.
You ever been to Red Rocks?
I haven't.
Oh my gosh!
Did Mike Langford talk about that?
He did, because I went. I saw Tyler Childers play there, and I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
Yeah. I mean, you're making me realize I don't think that I've been to that many. I mean, most of the concerts I've seen have been around here. I've seen some in Memphis and Chicago, but no venues that are like renowned just for their,
Let's talk about Indianapolis and the Indianapolis area. What's probably your favorite venue here?
Probably the old National Center, I'd say.
The old National Center. Yeah. That's so cool there.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah. I mean, I've been to concerts at Lucas Oil, Cambridge, Ruoff, and many at Market Square.
Oh, yeah.
Before it went down. But yeah, I like that. I've seen a lot of artists there. It's a more intimate setting. Mm-hmm. And, of course, you're never usually catching artists at the height of their, or else they would not be playing there because it's a smaller venue. But I think that contributes to a more intimate feel. And, I enjoy those.
Yeah. Have you been out to White River?
No.
No, you haven't?
No.
Yeah. I saw, it was the Beach Boys and Temptations and someone else, but it was a great show.
It's another one of those places that, or events, I should say, that I'm like, man, I'm missing out. I mean, I'm seeing so many people that I know that are going there, and they, it seems like they're having artists I would probably be more interested in than some of the other venues that are playing there, and I need to get on that. Yeah. But I've not been on that. How many times have you been out there?
We saw them play, and then... And I'm obviously dating myself, but we saw MC Hammer play there too one time with someone else. I thought it was pretty cool. So
yeah, I've seen some people that have been out there multiple times this season. Yeah. So I feel like I need to pay more attention to who's coming. I'm all about a good show. I don't limit myself to one genre. We talked a lot about the overlap between music and being a trial lawyer. Have you ever sang in a courtroom? I haven't. I've heard that there are some who have.
Yeah.
And I can imagine finding a moment that may be appropriate.
Right.
Has not happened yet.
Not yet.
So, yeah. I think that the only way that would work for me, it would really have to be a certain...
specific set of
It would have to feel right, or else it would just bomb, I would think.
Yeah.
It would have to really feel like the thing to do. And then, of course, if it lined up that way, it would probably be very effective. But it would have to be very special, I think.
Right.
Yeah, for that to work.
Well, Travis, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been my pleasure.
Yeah. And Travis, what's next for Travis Jensen?
I think that right now I'm very focused on finishing up the year with the Bar Foundation. We've got our gala that's coming up next month, as you're well aware, and then our Day of Giving in October, and those are going to keep me pretty focused for the next few months. In my practice, we have quite a full set of cases set for trial between now and March. And so, as you know, chances are a few of those, if not all of them, are going to resolve. Yeah. But it'll be pretty intense going for the next couple of quarters that we have coming up. And then personally for me, it's my daughters, my senior that we're getting ready to figure out where she's going to head off for college. And then, my 15-year-old, she also keeps herself pretty busy with activities. So between all of those things, I think that I'll have my plate pretty full.
If anyone wants to get a hold of you, how can they get a hold?
Pretty easy to get a hold of. JohnsonJensen.com is our website. tjensen@johnsonjensen.com is my email address. And also probably a Google search would pull up any number of places you can find me, like you, Alex.
Yeah, right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
And thanks, everyone, for listening to Circle City Conversations. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on more future conversations.